I mean, that is a legitimate thing.
Cool. Welcome to Not Judge Calls Live. Demystifying judges. If you didn't read the description, you might not know what that means. And because I don't have full faith in everyone, I'm going to tell you what that means. What I want to talk about is better communication is fine, and like closing the gap between judges and players. I've heard from several different people that judges don't play Magic. They don't understand what it's like to be a player, or that players don't really understand what judges do, and that there's a disconnect that makes it harder for judges to judge effectively and to ensure that players have a good time. So the goals of this presentation, and what I think people's goals in general should be, are to provide better communication with players at all levels, from your local game store up to a Grand Prix, to give players a better idea of what we actually do. We're not just rules enforcers. We're not just janitors. Some people think that. And to keep it fair, keep it fun, make sure everyone has a good time, assuming that all the rules are being followed, and that's what makes them have a good time. This is a conversation. I'm not pretending to be the authority on this topic, so I want people to interject whenever they feel like it, unless I tell you to stop. For two reasons. One is that the goal of this is for everyone to develop, and I think what facilitates that the best is to hear everyone's opinions and come to some sort of consensus on what we can do. And the second is that I don't have enough content to fill 60 minutes.
50 minutes.
50 minutes.
I mean, you were a little late to start.
Yeah, it's true.
That was all part of the plan.
We can't get him to tell you. He was in the bathroom.
Yeah, hold it all in.
There was some radical
candor.
We didn't ask him first.
Just don't go until you know you're about to present.
Well, not this time. Smash loss.
Cool.
Yeah, DQ's kind of harsh. Professional REL. That's how that works, right?
So my motivation here is that players often have a worse time because they don't really know what judges do or what judging is about. They know that the judge is someone there to make sure they have a bad time and they can't have fun playing their game. So a bad interaction with the judge can lead a player to feeling like judges are just there to ruin their day. They want to play, they want to play fast and loose with the rules. The judges tell them they can't do that. It's definitely more relevant at something like FNM than at a big competitive event, but even at competitive, like, this still happens. And providing clear communication can sort of help reduce that, because helping the players understand why we're doing what we're doing will hopefully give them an appreciation and a willingness to communicate with us. So we can do this, like I said before, at all levels. You do it at Grand Prix, at Star City Opens, PPTQs, whatever weekly events your local game store runs. You can also try to improve communication with players outside of events, maybe in your local communities by doing something like running classes or just doing some sort of local thing, or even online on social media. Social media is really important because what we say can reach a lot of people, and we should be careful how if we are presenting ourselves as part of the judge program, the things we say when we're doing that can affect people in more ways than we immediately see. What's up?
You could also sometimes get aggressive, even if you're not directly representing the judge community, will still reflect upon the judge community within the
Yeah.
So even if
So
you're not wearing the shirt, you can still have
Yeah.
Still say words that mean things.
Do you have an example of that?
No.
But just like,
not a good like quotable public example.
I have an example.
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
So I was at my local pre-release. I was actually playing in the event, and I'm a level 1 judge. I judge there normally. I'm very familiar with the store. I actually work there. And there was an interaction with a player and another player where player A thought that player B had taken cards from outside of the sealed pool, put them into his deck. And
Okay.
the TO had come to me and said, hey, can you help me out with this? I was in the middle of my game, so I was like, okay, I'll take the loss for this round, whatever, you need help, I'll take care of that. And talked to both players, it got a little heated, and I had accidentally said to the player who was upset, if I was the judge, then I would have done this. And the TO ended up ruling differently than that, and we've had a bad interaction with that player for months now.
Okay.
So it's very important that even, like, I was a higher level judge than the TO, but that doesn't take away from the importance of making sure that, since you are a judge, to act accordingly and respect the authority when the authority is needed.
Sure.
If that, like, we're tangenting now, but
Sure.
I like that example.
No, that's good.
But
Looking back, what
the
would
player, if I had looked back, I wouldn't have said that to the player. I
Okay.
would have agreed that I am not the judge for this event. The TO is making this ruling. He ended up ruling saying that the cards were probably just in this packaging, and gone from there. I had no place at the time to interject in that because I was actually participating in the tournament.
Sure.
I didn't win, didn't get to top 8, but
is it competitive relevant?
it was a pre-release.
Okay. Just want to, going off on that tangent, that's already a tangent.
I was also
Yeah. If the TO asks you to give a ruling in an event that you're playing in and not judging, I would make sure to talk to the TO about that in the future. Because I don't think taking a match loss is something reasonable to do. That's not a reasonable expectation to have. Like the TO just to say, hey, come stop whatever you're doing, lose your round in this event that you paid for. But that's
Right.
that
was
that is a
also
different thing.
discussed at the time, but yes.
Okay.
I would also preface go along with that, yes.
Cool. Did you have a thing?
I just wanted more of a clarification. So are we talking about the situation specifically when you exist as a judge, but you are not judging the event, and you are somehow affecting that? Are you talking about and how that can affect players?
So yes, I was mentioning in the first two cases when you are the judge of the event. So like if you're a judge of a large event or a small event, but also if you're not in an event, and people know you're a judge or you're presenting yourself as a judge.
Yeah. So one thing I was going to say, one of my pet peeves as a player and a judge is that I've had instances where, say there are two players, and there's an issue that requires a judge, and one of the players responds, oh, like, we can figure this out, I'm a judge. And so it's kind of a subversion of authority in that case, just as, oh, I didn't catch his name. But it's an issue where, even if it feels very harmless, it affects the candor of your match, and it also is a subversion of the judge who's actually running the event, because it's kind of presupposing your authority in a situation rather than what the right source should be.
So,
Right.
something that actually came up in a policy discussion earlier was that from the IPG itself, if two players can figure out the situation themselves without getting a judge involved.
So
But that-
I do. I want to try to get
phrasing
around
was
to
important.
everyone who had a point.
I was trying to delineate between, if people have the ability to sort it out, that's great. But using the language of, I'm a judge, so I can sort this out without,
Yeah.
without having to call for a judge, that was where I was having an issue.
Okay.
I think that's
Even if
definitely
it
uncalled
is-
for.
Yeah, even if it is, like, not a malicious intent, it's just like, oh, I can solve this without having to bother them. I think that can lead to more issues in terms of the relationship those two players had is now drastically different.
Right. You had something.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, you go first.
Okay, so speaking to that point, when I judge at my local stores, if I am the judge of the event and I'm playing in a match, I always preface that match with saying, Highness, thanks for playing. Like, I am the head judge of this event. If a judge call is needed in this match, I will defer to, the other L1 who's working with me. Every match I play. And then when I'm in a situation where if I never say, I'm a judge, let's figure this out. But even if the person I'm playing against doesn't know I'm a judge and they go, oh, I'm a judge, let me figure this out. I go, that's great, congratulations for being a judge, that's great, we love having judges in our community, but I'm just gonna call the judge anyways,
Yeah.
sorry. Like, that's, even if we can figure this out, I just wanna make sure that there's no discrepancies there.
Yeah.
So,
And then you had something.
I had an issue at, it wasn't an issue, it was more of a question. I had a player from my store approach me at the Grand Prix in Providence this weekend. Last
Couple
month.
weeks back,
And
yeah.
he had a ruling against him that he did not like. He disagreed with it. He came to me and he said, well, what would this ruling be? I personally thought that the ruling was wrong, but I did not convey this to the player. I said to the player, if you ever have a disagreement with the ruling, you always have the right to appeal to the head judge, and you should always take that opportunity because they're going to come over and give you a far more detailed reasoning behind it. I then later found out that the ruling was correct, and I am glad I did not say anything to said player. But that being said, it's always nice to try to push that aspect onto the players if they come up to you, and then they realize that you're in there for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess the only thing I would say about that is be careful about asserting that the head judge will have more detail to provide. Like maybe the floor judge just like knocked it out of the park.
If you disagree with a ruling from your judge, you always have the right to appeal.
Yeah.
He's like, well, it's too late, the match is over. I was like, well, in the future, if you feel that something is wrong, you can always ask for the appeal. Right or wrong, they're just going to come over and do what they need to do.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I want to get at with this presentation is sort of letting players know what rights they have and what they can expect in order to ensure that they have the best time that they can have. What's up?
I wanted to tangent off your story briefly. Just sort of a side note, you'll, I don't know about often, but maybe some of the time ever, encounter situations where the TO has different motives from the judge, especially in awkward areas like DQs, and in awkward areas like this is a limited event, I don't know if he added cards from outside the event. The TO has a motivation to say, this isn't a problem, I'm not disqualifying this person because I want repeat customers. The judge has an incentive to do a more thorough investigation and figure out whether they cheated because we hate savages. So those can reach different conclusions. This might have been a case of the TO not wanting to make anything messy and cause problems and bad customer service in their eyes, which we know is not how bad customer service works. It's not DQing the player who cheated. But you'll find that discrepancy. I know at a local store we had a tournament organizer who was not certified, knew very little about anything Magic policy related, had a situation come up that could have maybe involved a DQ, consulted with some judges who were next to the DQable action as it occurred, including myself, including a local L3, and we were very certain that this was a DQ, and the TO did not go ahead with that. So you always want to be sure, like if someone who doesn't know judging so well is going to ask for your opinion and figure out what they should be doing, and then they don't do it, that's not great either. So it's kind of separate, but it's definitely a thing to work on.
And the TO was the judge of the event?
They were the one making the rulings, yeah, because they didn't want to pay the judges.
So who was the head judge in Were?
It would have been the TO.
Okay.
Or blank.
Then sure, they can do that.
Yeah, they
and
can.
It's bad. Yeah.
Right.
I would definitely.
They consulted, and they got a very unanimous, strongly opinioned answer.
Sure.
And they just didn't want to do it.
I would definitely talk to that TO after. It is possible for the judge to disqualify a player who has earned themselves a disqualification, and then for the TO to prize that player out anyway. And that often makes them feel better. But
yeah,
if you're not the
side note about TOs,
yeah.
They sometimes have different goals. When that happens, I absolutely agree. You definitely want to address that person who is usually close to a store owner. and resolve that philosophy difference and convince them that if they're going to be making these decisions that matter and doing rulings and stuff and asking for help when they don't know, which is great, they should use that help.
Yeah.
Not just get it and throw it away.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
Like kind of happened in that case too.
They totally should. We can't force them to.
Right, they should.
Yeah.
And when they don't, you should maybe have that chat that they really should and reconsider how much you want to work with this
Yeah.
organization, etc.
Yep. Cool. So, specifically talking about large events, like what happened at Providence for you, some things that I think are important are to be friendly. The player probably doesn't know you, and if you walk up authoritatively when you take a call, the player can immediately feel bad about it. You should also give clear rulings. So I have an example. So say a player calls you over and... What's up?
I would just say that card seems busted.
Yeah, pretty good.
Really
man.
good.
Yeah.
It's errated, but
Okay, I was gonna say it just like takes
Anyway.
them up and yeah, sorry.
It still says I just actually looked it up. It still says non-wall creature, not non-defender.
It still says non-wall creature.
Wall is a creature type.
Yeah.
you can still just play it post combat.
What if you put it on a tree?
Yeah. Wow. Anyway, okay, sorry.
Cool. So player calls you over. That player's opponent has cast aggression targeting their Wall of Omens. You decide that the player who cast aggression is not cheating. I don't know why they think Wall of Omens is not a wall, but you've determined they're not cheating. What do you do? Like, who wants to take a crack at like what you would say to either player?
Clarifying question. What REL are we at here?
This is Compro.
Okay.
How far along are we? Like, was it something?
It like just happened. It's like, oh, aggression, and he's like, on my Wall of Omens, like, judge. Yeah.
Yeah, we agree with
I was gonna say illegal target, put it back in their hand, untap the mana, and give a. Unfortunately, it'd be ruling failure to maintain game state. Is that correct?
See, it'd be a GRV.
Yeah, GRV, game to rule violation. So failure to maintain game state, no.
Well, to the
It's
other
just the
player.
GRV, right?
Well, it depends on if the other players caught the wall.
Yeah, it's not.
How are you gonna kill anything with that? Sorry.
Cool. So you walk over, you say that. The opponent's or the player who casts it is like, why does it go back to my hand? Like, why? What's happening?
Alright, so the card was an illegal target. You could not have possibly made that target, so we take it right to the moment before the illegal state had happened.
Cool. Okay. And that's really what I wanted to get at, was not just explaining the result of an infraction, but explaining the fix. Explaining like why that was the fix. And also explaining in some cases that, you know, it's only a warning, but 3 warnings for the same type in the same day will upgrade. Things like that won't get them off guard, where if this player does this 2 more times and suddenly it's not a warning anymore, they just won't have any idea why they just lost a game. Yeah.
To your sort of probing question of like, what if I'm the player and I don't know what's happening? Like, that's kind of your cue for this person doesn't really play GPs regularly. They probably aren't sure that it gets upgraded later because they don't even know that it returns to their hand, which you kind of learn at a pre-release when you do something wrong. So, like, these are the signs. Also, never use abbreviations when you're working with players. I understand we're in a conference right now, but
Yeah.
don't like say at a table you're getting a GRV, because that's just a bunch of letters that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I personally, it sounds super redundant, but what I say in this case is, you have violated a game rule. We have something for this called a game rule violation, and that usually seems pretty straightforward to them. Yes.
I just wanted to add, if we're in the business of trying to connect with the players more,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously we wouldn't use something like GRB, but we would would talk to them the same way they're talking to us.
Yeah.
That's what Manny talked about this morning in his talk that I was at about making great calls. And it's just, don't throw words like GRV at them, and they're gonna feel more comfortable talking to you with whatever
Mhm.
questions, because
Yeah.
they feel like they can be on the same level as you if you talk to them.
Okay.
The same way.
Yeah, for sure.
When trying to deliver a ruling, I try to obviously it says tone is important,
Mhm.
but more importantly, eye contact and level. You don't want to be over them, arms crossed.
Yeah,
I
for
find
sure.
that it's nice to bring yourself down, maybe lean on the table a little, bring yourself down to eye contact, maybe nail down beside them, look up at them, things
Mhm.
like that. Will help to make the judge feel like they're more human and less robotic.
Yeah, and this is probably what Manny's entire presentation was just this one aspect of making yourself appear more human and showing some empathy when you are taking these calls. Yeah, you have your hand up.
I want to just mention deliberate language.
Yep.
So when you're talking to players, I've heard a lot of judges say, "I'm giving you a game rules violation," or "You have received an FTGMS," or what's spoken out, right?
Sure.
So those are not gifts.
Mhm.
You're not giving those away. Players are not receiving those. They are earning them.
Mhm.
So I always say, "You have earned a game rule violation here," or "You have earned a failure to maintain game state because you have, you violated the rules here." And then at the end of every judge call, no matter how heated it was or not, I always say, "Thanks, and you may resume." So
Yeah.
I always say thank you, that kind of thing. So I want to show that it's a relationship we're building here, not just a robot telling you played the rules wrong, but I want to gender that.
Yeah, I think I agree.
What?
That sounds very
Being sure to use the earn verb.
Yeah.
It's like you did something wrong and you deserve this. so
Well,
you-
I could see
You earned
both
it,
sides
kid.
of that.
It's like,
Um,
doesn't feel right to me.
I personally just say this is classified as this type of thing. Like this is what it is in the policy, not like that, but like this is what happens in this scenario.
The rules state this, so the rules state this must happen, as opposed to I'm giving you something to make you feel like I have an issue against you.
Yeah, I'm not doing it. You're not doing it.
Right.
That's
the
just
policy
like-
told me to.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
We both have to do
They're
it.
literally explicitly doing this. So
Right.
in my mind, that means that they have earned it. I am not the one giving you this penalty.
Mhm.
You are the one doing this to yourself. You are the one.
But that's not
violating
always
the
true.
game.
Yeah, that's not necessarily.
You know?
That's not always true.
I get the philosophy, but at the same time, if the players choose to resolve this by themselves and they don't call a judge, they can easily have that same situation and not have earned the penalty. And
True.
so they only
Absolutely.
receive it when you give it. So there's kind of another side there,
Yeah. But okay.
arguably.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to hit on here was something that a player specifically told me when I reached out and I was asking for ideas of things judges could do better. Sometimes if you approach a call and one player has far superior knowledge of the rules than the other player, we tend to give that player more speaking time and to agree with them more hastily. And that shows some bias. In a lot of cases, they're right, but we should really give each player an equal amount of time to explain what's going on, to show that we're there to be impartial and to make the correct calls. Yeah.
On that same note, another way that you can find yourself not being impartial is if the situation that either player gives you sounds really simple. I did a thing, we noticed it was wrong, I assume the fix is easy, what is the fix? And you're like, here's the fix, and we're done. And maybe there's no penalties and anything, and the other player's like, that's just not what happened.
Yep.
So, yeah, just be careful even in the really elementary, of course I know how this works kind of things that everybody agrees before we start to solve it.
Yep. For sure.
This simple thing happened.
You're both sides of the
Opponent,
story
you did
before
this.
deciding how the end result of said story is.
Yep. Absolutely.
This happened.
At small events like F&M or whatever your local store runs, most of the ideas still apply. In these cases, we're not going to be at competitive REL anymore, so there's a lot more flexibility in using mistakes or calls as teaching experiences.
It is great. Anyway.
So yeah, we're especially not just there to enforce rules and just this is how it is. I mean, we are actually, but we're there to help the players learn and make sure they have the best time they can. So if someone makes a mistake like that wall thing with aggression, maybe explain, or what's a better example? Some players will go, oh, you can't target my wall, you have to target your own creature.
Yeah.
And that's just absolutely not true. And we want to make sure both players know why that's not true and that they shouldn't even suggest that. Because I hear that a lot at like F&M level, where it's like, you tried to cast this spell targeting my creature's an illegal target, you already cast it, you have to target your own. And I think that's a good learning opportunity to teach them, or to explain why in the policy we don't do that. And in my mind, that's because that's an unfair punishment for a mistake that's easy to make. Especially if it's something like Doomblade targeting a Vault Scourge, like it doesn't look very black. So I could easily see players making that mistake. We also have more chances to talk to players. You'll usually see the same people pretty often. So if you find that someone's having difficulties or just has some sort of issue, you can totally take the initiative to start a discussion with them about that. And that definitely goes a long way into making sure that players have better communication and like a better mindset about judges in general. Another thing a player mentioned to me is that one of their biggest fears when making a judge call is that their opponent will think they're being a jerk. Like, oh, why do you need to get a judge involved? And so I think at this level, that can really help. And if all of the players see that you're there to make sure everyone has a good time, there won't be that hesitation. Yeah.
I found that a great way to give a ruling, like the Doomblade Vault Scourge example.
Yeah.
I found a great way to start that conversation is to say, well, at regular REL, this is how we do this. So
Mhm.
that they understand that it's not me giving this ruling.
Mhm.
We're starting from this base policy.
Mhm.
And that is something, because I think, the REL can be a little arcane
Mhm.
to the average player, especially when they're like an 11-year-old kid
Sure.
or something. So I just say, at events like FNM, which are regular REL, we do X, Y, and Z here. So
Yep.
you're just going to go back to your hand, and we're going to tap the lands and play on.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
And
Also to nitpick with acronyms, especially at regular, people don't know what RELs are.
Well, yeah, at
Yeah.
regular rules enforcement.
At this casual event we're playing in,
Yes.
is like
You could,
probably more comprehensible.
yeah, you can even add to that by saying, if this were something like a Grand Prix,
Yes.
there would be a more strict.
And I say that as well.
Yeah. Cool. So, within your local community, it's usually more of that same having a rapport with the players, getting to know the players and having them feel more comfortable talking to you, and that'll lead to them being more comfortable calling a judge over in general because they know, judges aren't bad people or whatever. And even when we're not judging the event, even if we're just playing in an event, there's bullet points there, but they can't even see them.
Real.
People will know you're a judge if Asa, you live in the same area as me.
Weird.
Yeah. If I see you at our local game store, I'm gonna know you're a judge. You've judged there in the past. If you're playing there, I'll be like, that's that guy who judged that pre-release that one time.
He judges that thing.
And if you're being a jerk, I'm going to be like, that judge is a jerk. Maybe I'll generalize and be like, all judges are jerks, all judges do whatever you did. So
It's especially bad if you're like the only judge.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because then it's like,
Yeah.
well, crap.
Yeah.
I set a horrible precedent for the whole, program.
Yeah, for
Whoops.
sure. Obviously, be inclusive. It's best not to go around, spouting slurs or anything like that.
Death with all adjustments.
Yeah. If you're playing in an event, be a friendly player. If people think that judges are bad, like unfun to play against, and are just like, what?
We're not gonna rules lawyer yet, 'cause we don't know
Yeah.
what's wrong.
So if I don't like playing against you because I think you're a rules lawyer as a player, I'm going to extrapolate and assume that that's how you are as a judge. And you give these explanations of things that are
Robotic.
just robotic or unfair. And if I do end up going to an event that you're judging, I might not want to call you over. Or I might not even want to play in the event at all. Another possibility, and this really isn't necessary but is cool and something we've done in my local area in the past, is to get players involved in things outside of events. So we do a series of judge classes. We did one every semester for, I think, 4 semesters straight. And we're in Amherst, Massachusetts, so it's a big college town with a lot of students.
Judges.
And we invited players and said, this is geared towards becoming a judge, but we're going to go over a lot of the rules and a lot of the philosophy behind the rules. And there's even some potential to get some strategic information, like, for instance, casting things during the end of combat step or whatever. And if players feel comfortable going to that, they can definitely get a lot more insight into what judging is about.
Don't be a scummy Vanillion Click player.
Yeah, don't be... You can definitely suggest that people not be scummy with Vanillion Click. I don't know.
Vanillion Click. Well, here's my hand. Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Target myself. Thanks for the info.
Yeah, you guys all know what that example is.
I mean, that happens.
Way too much.
Yeah, so...
You don't have to declare a target until it hits the battlefield.
Yeah, there's a difference between like suggesting that people be sportsmanlike and
Yeah.
requiring that they not make that play, because you
Yeah.
can't do the latter.
No, absolutely not. But
It's like child's check.
explaining why you shouldn't, and also explaining that it is legal to do, will probably help someone at some point. They either will realize that what they're doing is scummy and stop doing it, or they'll wait for their opponent to target someone.
Like certain grinders on the SCG scene who prefer to say move to clean up step instead of move to end step.
Hey,
Savage.
Savage AF.
Sorry, I really
Makes
don't
sense.
like that one. That one's pretty.
Move to discard.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I mean it's explicit. Like again, like, if you're grinding and playing competitive,
And I
you
think...
can't tell them not to.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't, but it's.
Still a little, feels a little
Yeah,
silly.
like feel free to hate it. It's just.
Yeah.
it's
But
just-
what you can do is educate players about what it means if their opponent does that.
Yeah, definitely.
So I try to do an exercise when I play EDH with players, and one of the exercises, and it sounds scummy at first until you explain to people, like, I'm not finishing through with it. I look at the players and go, well, I have 9 cards in my hand, I'd like to move to discard, and I know they have effects they want to play. And then they're like, yeah, and I'm like, wait, pause for a second and think about this. If I move to discard, you will lose all chances or abilities to do anything left. So before I get to discard, is there any last minute things you'd like to do? And it's an education in telling them, try to learn the last possible minute. If you're planning on doing something last possible minute, learn when that last possible minute is. Say, well, I want to stop at your end step.
Mhm.
You've already agreed to fast forward to this point. Well, I'm only going to agree to this point.
Yep.
And it's past the point of them back. It's saying, well, I don't want to go to this point now.
It's also, it's not always, but generally most of the time, there's like a mild upward inflection of like when we clean up. And it's like, I'm giving you this option.
Yeah,
I am
if
questioning
you're
it
gonna
at
like
you.
read somebody's poker game, then yeah, you're gonna get the tell that like they're trying to bait you. But
Sure.
that's a stretch.
Yes, you should
Yeah.
say no.
So is that tournament shortcut completely ended if they say move to clean up and you go, I have effects in your end step?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
Totally
you're
fine.
accepting
It's
most
when
of
they
the
go, sure.
You're
and
asking
then,
them, are we doing
Yeah,
this? And
because
they're
when
saying
you
no.
say sure, you're like,
You're
you're
ceding
implying
priority.
that I'm okay with the
Yes.
passive priority
Yes.
until we're
until
clear.
that time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Move
And
to
then-
clean up. Sure.
Yeah.
Oops, I said yes.
Beginning of combat, it has been fun and exciting
Can we
lately.
not? That sucks.
So yeah, we could just not talk about that right now.
Please.
But I want to crew my copter. Ah.
Toby, you're fired.
Got him. Social media, I think, is super interesting.
Super interesting.
Because
You know, you could discard it from there, and it has to be yours.
discard card from your hand, yeah, not from your
Yeah,
opponent's
they
hand.
have to.
Yeah.
That's sick. Yeah, get rid of this one. Get rid
Two
of
blue, target that card. I'll draw.
Oh, man,
Great.
So good.
Waiting for double colon, like misprint, where it's like colon after the cast and then a colon after the discard effect. Where does the cost end?
Yeah. So this is sort of the same as within your local communities and things we do in person. If people know you're a judge, and the more clear it is that you're a judge, the more careful you should be about what you say and how players will react. Sometimes on Reddit, people will have the little L2 or L3 tag next to them. And like, especially if your Reddit flair is like L3 Arlington, Virginia, people probably know who you are. And if you're going to be, rude, and if you're going to say something like, all players are idiots, they leave trash all over the place, that's just like furthering the divide that some players have with judges. If you're on your Facebook and you have people that are your friends, I mean, obviously you can say whatever you want. I would personally try to keep it in mind that people aren't always going to react well to my opinions, but
So what you're saying is I should make a fake account where I flame everyone.
Thank you for that conclusion.
if that's what you want to do, I can't stop you. But if people figure it out, it's a problem.
Get some L4 flyer and then do it.
Hell yeah.
Yes, get L4 Flare right now.
Ready?
Yes.
Here I come.
Good idea.
Welcome.
I'll just Photoshop it.
Great.
We did it, Reddit.
I'm hoping.
Some additional things. I just grabbed the definition of the player experience sphere, which has a bunch of projects. A lot of these can be found on judge apps, and the goal of this is to have player-facing projects, things that get input from players and things that go out to players. A lot of judge projects, yeah.
I don't know what the player experience sphere is.
So it's basically,
Website?
it's a set of judge projects, like within judge apps and outside of judge apps. If you look at things within judge apps, a lot of the projects are just for us. Things like Mystical Tutor, it's like for judges or people who want to become judges, or some Google Doc PPTQ scheduling thing. That affects the players because, yeah, your PPTQs have to be staffed, but that's not really directly letting them know like what's going on. And so this is from David Lightfield Smith's description of player experience sphere, and this was posted on the Wizards website. Customer service skills training, so things like making good calls. Extra mile style fun things. One of the examples on there he gave was, making wacky formats with, crazy rules. Like if you want to do Judge Tower and invite all your players to play Judge Tower, or if you want to do
Sanctionable.
if you want to do EDH with a bunch of like crazy rules, just like anything that shows that judges can be actively involved in making things fun. Running surveys is a good way to get input. Things like how was your last event? I don't know, whatever.
What can we do to help you?
Yeah, you probably want to be more specific than what can we do to help, but that sort of thing. Like sometimes judges only talk to other judges, and they decide what's best, without conferring with players first. And if we do that too much, we're not really catering to them anymore.
We're here for them. We're not here for us.
So if the players stop having a good time and stop coming to events,
Then you lose that.
we get no money, we get no product, we get no foils. And then we have to go get real jobs or something.
Boo.
So it's in our best interest to make sure players are having a good time. And then there's things like actually writing articles and blog posts. Like I said, this was posted on the actual Wizards website, so not just blogs.magicjudges.org, because I doubt players are going to go to that. You can organize social events, and then there's other projects devoted to promoting diversity within the Magic player base.
So I have a quick scenario, kind of playing off the idea of trying to obviously as judges, our role is to kind of facilitate the recovery of situations where something didn't go. So for instance, at Calabash pre-release,
Mhm.
I was playing 2 NHI with a friend of mine.
Okay.
And the situation came about where our opponent had an Inventor's Fair. He used it, for those of you can use it to tutor up an artifact. And he tutored up Metalwork Colossus. And he's tapped out. And so he takes the card, throws it out on the table, and then he's like, all right, I'll go get Metalwork Colossus, and then start shuffling. And he at some point had said that he had cast it because of Metalwork Colossus can have its cost reduced with a number of non-creature artifacts you have. So he puts it up, he puts it on the table and starts to finish shuffling. And so we don't really notice it. And then they finish up their turn, and they go to our turn. Me and my friend, we draw a card, and then at some point in the turn, I recognize and I go, hey, what's the Metalwork Colossus doing out? And he goes, oh, I cast that last turn. When he couldn't have. So he read it as it costs less for each artifact you have, including creatures.
Oh, okay.
So he thought that the cost had been reduced when it hadn't been.
Right.
And so he was like, I cast this last turn. I was like, oh, well, you couldn't have cast it either way. That's kind of why I didn't know why it was out there.
Yeah.
I figured you just hadn't put it back in your hand yet. And so it led to a judge call where the ultimate result was we weren't going to rewind, and the card was just going, it had been cast and was in play. And so my friend, so I had understood the, obviously it's not a great feeling, but I understood the rolling. Whereas my friend was like, so you're just telling me he can just cast 10/10s for free when he can't, and there's nothing we can do about that? And so the judge was trying to explain this is what happened, this is these 3 options we had, and this was the most. But my friend was like, so what you're saying is he very well could have understood that he couldn't have played that card, played it anyway, and because we happen to move an X amount of distance, he's just allowed to get a free cheat. And so the situation kind of evolves where it's the player, I guess what we're trying to get at is so the player is upset with the ruling for something that doesn't feel like it shouldn't. Obviously, there are other circumstances, but the player feels like it shouldn't have gone this way.
Right.
And they're now having this conversation with the judge, where at that point, from a judge's perspective, what are you supposed to do? Where this was the ruling that we're given, and the player is just clearly upset with what happened, and there isn't like a clear way to resolve it to give at the end.
End it, and then tell them to talk to you later. But like, don't give it 20 minutes.
Yeah. I would definitely.
You can't make any more progress, so
Those
you're
periods,
just done.
Like, so is it regular?
Yeah. Out of curiosity, how many things had passed?
We had drawn cards and like played spells, and we were going to the end of our turn because what
Okay.
happened was I was like, we weren't going to go to combat. Well, we went to combat, but we weren't going to make any attacks because it was just bad.
Mhm.
We were like passing turn, and I was going like doing quick survey, like, is there anything we forgot? And then I noticed that it was in play after we had like pretty much done our stuff in the turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If a team has taken a turn, I think it's pretty reasonable to probably not rewind there.
It also feels
so.
like a cheat, but it's actually.
I feel like that presents a very, very strong teachable moment for you to have with your friend there, like, or the judge afterwards have with your friend there. Just say like, hey, you know, part of your responsibility as a Magic player in the match is to be watching what the opponent is doing. You know, that's part of the game. Otherwise, we all just cheat.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and also to point out that making a mistake versus cheating are completely different things, and that cheating requires intent, and that if you as the judge believe the player is cheating, that's an entirely different conversation. That's not can we rewind this, that's should you be here anymore. Yeah.
That just sounded like a genuine misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Felt cheaty.
Yeah, I think
My
that's
$1 million question would be to ask the players, did you announce the intent to cast the spell like you had been throughout the course of the game? And had the player been casting spells the same way all through the game, or was this one instance where that card was cast a completely different way than the normal strategy, at which point I would feel that maybe the player misread it and put it into play. How do you fix this?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was what I had poorly articulated, was that the situation was you have to make a judge call that is correct, but the person that you're trying to explain the ruling to might see it as like, this is a gray area that can be exploited, and I'm not happy about this.
Yeah.
Why is this happening?
Yeah.
And so it's a point where like, and I think Dan articulated it as well, is like you have to stop it for the sake of you being able to continue to run your event. You have to stop it.
It
And
was
say,
like,
this
to
is
answer
something
your
you have to
question
go.
of how do you follow up with it? Well, you don't. You make them play Magic, and then you talk to them later.
You can say like, I understand that you're frustrated with this ruling.
We have to
but
let it
please
be.
come
Yeah,
find me
that's-
later, and I'd be more than happy to spend as much time as you think you need
Yes.
to understand this ruling.
Yeah,
Yep,
all those
absolutely.
things, but
Yep.
not then and there.
Just it's way to be done.
What's that?
Very.
We're pretty close.
5 minutes?
I have another slide.
4 minutes.
So I'm working on one project that falls under the player experience sphere. I felt like I had to plug my own project here. Be a good time for that. It's called the IPG for Players, which is focused on producing a document sort of similar to the annotated IPG, except targeted at players directly, explaining what each infraction does or how each infraction works, what you should look out for with your own play mistakes, and what you should look out for from your opponent, and then also things to expect from a judge call, the fact that you have the right to appeal, the fact that Star City staff is not the correct person to appeal to in a lot of cases, and the person in a red shirt usually is. And then a shorter guide, which is 1 page front and back, which we hope judges will give out at their PPTQs or other sort of smaller competitive rel events that have newer players to competitive rel, that explain these are your responsibilities. You are responsible for tracking the game state. You are responsible for calling a judge if your opponent makes a mistake. And you also have the right to a safe environment. You have the right to call a judge when you think there's a problem. And you have the right to basically a fair match. And that's it.
What is the art of demystify?
So it's demystify, and then everything else was an enchantment. Was the thing. That was the thing.
Next level.
Oh wait, real?
I still
Yeah.
can't get over
Oh
that.
my god, I was
Authority
just bad
card
and didn't
limited.
even notice.
It's not the